Back in January, I had the opportunity to sit down with two of the bright minds behind Riot Vanguard. While at Riot, Clint was the project lead and Nemi was the lead architect. They both have a ton of experience in the industry, and we get to that during the interview, but it's safe to say they know a thing or two about fighting cheaters. Now, I say former because they left Riot to pursue building their anti-cheat startup, Byfron Technologies. Their whole idea behind their product is prevention. It's an anti-tamper tool meant to be used in conjunction with whatever anti-cheat is already being used by that game. In layman terms, current anti-cheats are reactive. Hyperion is meant to add on as the proactive part. Now, in the interview, we go over how to make it in the industry, what it was like working at Riot and Blizzard, the cat and mouse relationship between the cheating scene and developers, why cheaters cheat, the future of cheating and anti-cheat, hardware-based and computer vision-based cheats. In summary, there is a lot to cover, so sit down, grab a snack, and drop a like. What is Byfron Technologies? It looks like one of y'all's products, Hyperion. It's supposed to be your flagship product that you guys are bringing to the marketplace. Can you explain what Hyperion is? What's the, goals behind Byfron?
So yeah, pretty much. We were at Riot. You know, we had just launched Valorant. Well, we've been basically a year in after the launch of Valorant, and we were deciding like, okay, how can we have a bigger impact on the industry? And so, we decided to kind of go it on our own, and we really kind of, I think, figured some things out. I would love to say in the hardest way possible. A lot of our lessons have been, hard learned, I would say. But we wanted to focus more on a preventative side, like preventative anti-cheat instead of just detection. Because one of the big lessons that we learned was that, most people that cheat are actually more engaged with the game. Right. So like cheaters spend more money in game, cheaters play more than the average player. They care about the game a lot. They care about standing, things like that. And so, a lot of the value is in keeping players from cheating in the first place. Right. And so to go back just a little bit, like when we were building Vanguard, when we were building Valorant or building the anti-cheat team for Valorant, I was really impressed with Overwatch's launch. For an FPS title, it had probably one of the cleanest launches I've ever seen, with the amount of, it was very low cheating, right? And a lot of that is really just has been Nemi's life work in software protection. So instead of just thinking of like, hey, the crime kind of has to be committed if you're just working in the detection space, right?
Yeah.
It's
very reactive.
Correct. And like, look, you absolutely need good detection too. I'm not, obviously we when we built out our systems with Riot, we had good detection as well. And I'm not trying to argue against that, but we saw a really big hole in the industry for more preventative side of things, right? To make cheating harder and that kind of stuff. So yeah, so that's kind of why we started Byfron, and that's kind of our goal.
Okay. And then I guess how did you guys even get your start? Because I know, Nemi, you were at Blizzard. Clint kind of stole you over from there. How did you guys even get your start in the industry, I guess, in the anti-cheat industry? Were you guys former, cheat developers, or exactly how'd that work out?
Yeah, I guess I can start here on this question. So my whole thing was I was playing World of Warcraft in 2004, 2005, and I couldn't really afford the monthly subscription at the time. I was just a kid. My parents wouldn't let me steal their credit card, so I had to figure out how to play this game that everyone else was playing, and I loved. Right, I loved playing it. I played the trial, and I was super addicted to it. So I started looking into World of Warcraft private servers, so emulation. That's really how I got my entire start in this entire industry. Right, so I started with doing private servers for World of Warcraft, or learning how to create private servers for World of Warcraft, really just for my own purposes. But there was an entire community built around that. There were a lot of people who were working on that shared technology. I just kind of stepped in and did some basic things, and I learned from very great minds who kind of helped mentor me and teach me a lot of this stuff. So that's my, I guess, entry into this industry. And then I kind of detoured a bit. I went into more traditional security afterwards. I worked at the government, the U.S. government. So I did Department of Defense style stuff, more traditional InfoSec job. However, after a few years in, I was like, this is not really where my passions lie. I kind of wanted to go back to the gaming industry, because that's, where I got my start, where, I jumped in. And so I applied to a couple different game companies, and really the only company that gave me a chance at the time was Blizzard. I actually applied to Riot too, and the Riot said no. So this was way back, right? Before
Yeah.
I didn't have any like experience in the game industry, so makes sense. And Blizzard gave me a chance to kind of come in, and I told them where my passions lied with like security and gaming, and so they kind of let me, make an anti-cheat solution for Overwatch, because Overwatch was coming around. I heard about it during like BlizzCon, maybe the year before. They did like a light announcement about this new team-based shooter, and when I eventually came to Blizzard, that was my task. We kind of built a lot of the systems there with the entire team at Blizzard to combat cheating, to have like a more preventative solution, right? And as Clint said, the Overwatch launch, like compared to most FPS games at the time, went very smooth. Like there wasn't a lot of cheating because of the complexity that kind of we introduced with our preventative solution there. And so, I will say, like throughout the years, I know Overwatch's cheating has gotten worse, but initially it was actually pretty solid. A lot of the learnings that kind of happened at Blizzard, I took to Riot when I eventually got hired. Clint got me in, and I basically started actually, building similar systems, like obviously from the ground up. And I took a lot of learnings I had at Blizzard and try to improve those systems even more so. And I think the system first debuted with League of Legends. So League of Legends was the first product that had the anti-tamper solution. And we noticed that as soon as we released a product like that on LoL, cheating rates drastically fell. Like we're talking like sub 1%, like 1 in 100%.
And by League of Legends cheating, you mean things like scripting. So like Xerath was one of the more popular characters people would script on. I haven't played League in forever, so I don't remember the other characters that people would use when they're scripting, but that's what you're alluding to, right?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, you're right. So like LoL had a scripting issue. It got so bad in Korea, I think Clint had to fly to Korea and actually preach the gospel on anti-cheat. It's a wild story. I'll let him jump in on that in a bit when he talks about his like a rise in the game industry. But yeah, what we noticed is like the solution was super effective on League, and then we kind of took that solution we built and put it in Valorant as well. So the idea was Valorant also had a very strong anti-cheat system, a Vanguard of sorts, but also had this like preventative layer, right? This anti-tamper that we built in-house, and at Riot we called it Pac-Man. And that was kind of my entire like history into the gaming industry. And obviously with this new job at Byfron, I'm really working on kind of sharing the technology, the preventative technology. We're building it obviously again from scratch, and we've taken a lot of the stuff we've learned, or that I've learned at Blizzard, that I've learned at Riot, and creating, I think, the most superior version of this product that we think is going to be super effective for the gaming industry, because we've seen it as kind of my career progressed, right? I've seen the effectiveness of this thing. I've seen like how important it is to have something like this and how much value it provides. The most important thing, like with any product, is that you constantly keep iterating over on it, right? Like it's not like set it and forget it. You always have to evolve it, right, based on the threats that you see. So
especially with anti-cheat, you can't just put it out there and expect no one to tamper with it anyway.
Yeah, at Byfron we get that chance to kind of really take this product that we've kind of developed in-house to solve this problem and constantly keep iterating on it, and spend the time and resources into like effectively maturing the product indefinitely as we see more and more issues pop up. So I spent a long time chatting about myself. So Clint, you want to jump in?
Yeah, I'll give you my quick overview. So I mean, I'd say I've always been a gamer and a competitive gamer. Like I remember I played Counter-Strike in 2000. I'm a big Street Fighter player. Street Fighter is like my favorite game. So I actually got my start at a startup company in the risk and fraud space. So most of my experience was fighting, kind of similar, a little bit similar to cheating, where you're always fighting an active community. I participated in some of those communities when I was much younger. Cheating was definitely, at a very nascent stage during those. You could have a hex editor and get away with most anything you needed in those days. So, I'd hit a point in my career where, I was in kind of the financial world, and, going to work for a bank wasn't too exciting. And, I was like, I've always loved games. At that time, it was 2013, so Riot was really doing a lot for esports, and particularly they were investing a ton in their players. And I was just like, wow, this is just such a brilliant company to be focusing on players this way, and I'd love to be a part of it. So I actually joined and helped lead their fraud effort, for like credit card fraud, that kind of thing. And really early on started working on the anti-cheat problem space, just because at that stage the company was a lot younger, and we really didn't have a dedicated anti-cheat team. I would say Riot and cheating problems were everybody problems at that time, so everyone worked to solve them. So.
And that's typically how it is at a younger company. It's
exactly.
Everybody wears different hats all the time. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, definitely understandable there. When you were there much earlier in Riot's time as a company, and then closer to when, they started pushing out Valorant, and obviously now they're this much bigger company. They have a bunch of different products they're working on. Did you say it? Would you think that maybe their approach to anti-cheat and how serious they take it has also changed in some ways? I would imagine it has, but
oh, definitely. Yeah. I mean, I would say that I give senior leadership of that company a lot of credit to understand that this was a huge value for players. Like early on, I got a lot of support, because like really what we just started with was like a random round table in the company and invite anybody who cared about cheating to discuss like, okay, how do we make this better? Right. And so it really kind of grew almost as like grassroots thing through the company. But we always had good buy-in from senior leadership of like, no, this is a really important thing for players, and it's an important thing to get right. So I would say that's kind of where Riot was probably ahead of the curve, and from a lot of other game companies, is they saw that like, as games move into a service, the quality of the service is going to matter more and more. And then, on the other side of the spectrum, when you're dealing with security, right? Like, there's no single solution when you can be attacked in so many different ways, right? Like the idea that, any one thing is going to stop cheating, it's silly to look at, because what you're really fighting is the motivation of the attackers, right? And so what's their energy, what's their resources, what's their time? So they actually define the battlefield a lot of the times, right? Because it's like, well, how many groups are you dealing with? How much money are they making? All those type of things, right? If the closer you get and the more you understand that community, right, the more you could bring talent over from that community. You can understand the directions that they're moving in. You can understand the technical side of things, how your own systems and game design is motivating potentially bad behavior, right? Like it's not always completely just an outside source. So the having people that focus on that as a job obviously makes you much, much better. And so like, I think that, the Riot team, obviously Nemi and I are very biased because we are part of that team and helped build that team. But I think, they're the best in the biz.
Circling back to y'all's product, is Hyperion going to be your flagship product you guys are bringing to the market, or do you guys also have other products in development?
I think that Hyperion is definitely going to be the product that we're known for, but we have a lot of other products coming down the pipeline too. And so for us as a company, we want to really address the cheating problem. And so we will build products to address that in whatever way we can. We think Hyperion is interesting because there's not really another product out there on the market that serves the same need. So we think it is like a strategic product, a preventative solution that kind of synergizes well with an already like existing anti-cheat detection solution. So it's not really like, I wouldn't say our competitors are people like Easy Anti-Cheat or BattleEye. In fact, I think we will greatly support games that do use those products, right? Like it provides a strong foundation of security, and we have a lot of features there that BattleEye and Easy Anti-Cheat don't have, right? So I think cheating is not like there's not a silver bullet for cheating, right? Like you need a lot of different things to solve cheating. You need a really good preventative solution, which is what Hyperion is. You need a really good detection solution. You also need a really good strategy to go after the cheating marketplace. You got to figure out how you're going to handle operations when you do engage with cheaters. You also need a legal strategy, right? Like if you eventually have to go after these companies, because cheating is a lucrative business and these guys are making tons of money. So they build up companies and you have to go after their companies with lawyers. It gets complicated, but cheating.
I would say it depends on the size of the threat, right? Like if you're a small game studio and you're experiencing lower levels of cheating, like there's probably games where a solution like Hyperion is enough, right? Like it's enough to probably protect that community. But if you're in the very top echelon of competitive games where there is a lot of money on the line, both from influencers and esports players and just the general player base that want to win or pay for boosters or whatever, then you gotta attack it with the same threat you're receiving.
Yeah, I've compared. I've usually said, and this is something I give credit to Riot to, is that it's typically a three-prong approach where it's like the actual anti-cheat itself, moderation, which is moderation and monitoring, so it's like monitoring the actual cheating market, and then there's the legal end, where then you do go after cheat developers. I think it was like Riot that went after some of the bigger ones like Gator cheats, and the other ones are just slipping off the top of my head because there's always so goddamn many of them. But like. It's not just like just sue all the cheating companies. You can't really do that because sometimes there's jurisdiction issues and stuff like that. And then it's not just like, just reverse engineer every single cheat you can find. And it's like, that's not really a catch-all solution either. And that's something like you try to explain to people. It's like, it's a little bit more complicated than that. There's a little more nuance, but it's not always, it's harder to see when you're being affected by cheaters and you're not actually combating them or looking into them all that much. So you mentioned that Hyperion is essentially like another tool. What exactly Hyperion does differently when it comes to being preventative than other anti-cheats on the market?
The way to think about it is, so I'll give you the long-winded answer and then I'll give you the short answer. How's that sound? So the long-winded answer is like, we think about security in layers, right? And that preventative layer is the first one. And the more you can stop there, the better, right? So like, you got to realize that we're really going after the motivation, right? So we're attacking the motivation for why people are in this space. Some people want to cheat because, they just want to troll other people. Some people will cheat only when they think that, they can get away with it. They won't cheat if they think they're going to lose their account because like status means everything to them, right?
Yeah.
So when you're fighting these cheaters, a lot of them at this stage now, it's money is their motivation, right? So with Hyperion, a lot of what we do is protect the game, so we make it harder for the game binary to be understood. So even to build cheats takes a lot more energy and work. So if you have an ROI that you're trying to create, I know this sounds kind of a little businessy and crazy in the world of cheating.
At the end of the day, it does come down to business. So that's fair.
Some of these, they have to have a cost, right? And they're hiring engineers too, or they are engineers. Different cheat outfits are set up differently, but there's guns for hire out there, and if you got to pay more, then it might not be worth it to run your cheat service. So that's kind of where Hyperion starts. But then we also the kind of the simple way or the simple analogy to use around it is we protect the game space and protect the binary. So the analogy I like to use is like it's like a bouncer, right? So Hyperion actually loads before your game loads, and it checks to see if you're allowed to access the memory of this application. And pretty much if you're not on that list, instead of just declining you, it blows up, right? So it crashes the whole application. So that's kind of like first step. So there can be different things done on the detection layer, at boot and at run. And so why that's important is you're actually stopping the cheats from being loaded into the game before the game is even running, right? So that keeps those players from getting into the game and actually starting to cheat, and affect other players' experiences.
Yeah, just to kind of tag along on that too, I think Hyperion really increases the complexity, right, that it takes for an adversary to kind of understand and analyze a game. And then even if you get through that, you get through the analysis part of the game and you have a little cheat going, we iterate really quickly, and every build of the game is protected very differently. So that is to say that when a future update is released by this game company, things will change drastically, and therefore you'll have to put in a substantial amount of effort that you wouldn't have had to put in otherwise, right, to research this new build. So, and on top of that, right, like in addition to just talking about that level of complexity, the reverse engineering complexity, we also have a really good understanding of what's running on the system, what integrity the machine's at, what kind of applications are there, what's interacting with our game process, and the memory that is sensitive in the game process. So with all of those metrics, we can determine whether or not certain software is allowed to engage with the process. Like, hey, we want to allow Discord and OBS to run inside of the game because that's a legitimate tool. We want to let the Steam overlay pop up in the game. That's allowed, right? Gamers can use that. But if you're using an ESP that gives you, extrasensory perception, you can see through walls. That's bad. Like, we want to block that behavior. And Hyperion has a lot of heuristics that determine that kind of stuff. TLDR, Hyperion, I think, is a very effective solution because, we don't see a lot of game companies investing in the preventative pieces like this. And as Clint mentioned a little earlier, we do think that for some games, Hyperion is enough, right? Like, you don't need an anti-cheat system. A great example is Legends of Runeterra. I don't know if you've heard of that game. It's a card game, Riot Games released. Yeah, for a card game like that, it's mostly server authoritative, so you can't really do like weird things. You don't necessarily know what cards people have in their hands because the server does not send you that information.
It doesn't send you that.
Yeah, exactly. So for that, a Hyperion-like solution is all that you really need. And at Riot, when we developed our own in-house version of it, we only used like an anti-tamper solution for that game because really the biggest problem in that game genre is botting. Like, we just want to make sure that you can't grind the content easily, and there's a lot of preventative pieces already for that. But yeah, obviously for something like an FPS game that has a lot of nuances, you want to have multiple layers, especially if you're a bigger game. But we do think a strong foundation, a strong preventative piece is an absolute necessity in the current state.
That's fair. And then also, I guess, because you guys mentioned, like you just said that, every update will be protected differently.
Yes.
We know game development is difficult. There's multiple teams working on these titles. You push one change, it has to go through QA, then it goes through console certification if you're developing on console as well. I guess, and of course, this would mainly be a PC thing, right? Because you don't really need this level of protection on consoles. Consoles are closed off compared to a PC. But I guess, how easy is it for developers to actually work with the tools you guys give them through Hyperion? How much extra work is required is the easiest way of putting it.
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, we try to make it as transparent as possible to the game developers so that they don't have to deal with a lot of it. Integration into an existing product can be done within minutes, right? We have you don't even have to integrate any code changes. We have an optional like SDK API that you can use to interface with Hyperion, but that's optional. Like, you don't even have to use that to get the baseline of protection that Hyperion does provide. So in terms of integration costs, it's pretty low. Protecting a build of your game is pretty quick too. We're talking minutes, right? Within 2-3 minutes, you can get a unprotected game and protect it with Hyperion. So it's relatively quickly, right? Like, we're not talking a lot of resources having to be invested on the development perspective. Now, from QA, right? The QA perspective, when you're really like trying to, validate these builds, what we did at Riot when we had similar systems was we protected nearly all builds. So every build that was effectively being tested by QA was protected. So if there were any issues that weren't like related to the protection product, like, hey, there's a bug in this build, they could quickly iterate on that. So they wouldn't have to necessarily have to then re-protect a build and then send that one off. All builds by default are protected. And so when QA receives them, it's pretty transparent to them what that is, right? Like, they don't
what
have
the
to
actual
necessarily
issue is.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's one baseline, I guess, variable throughout all the builds. Okay.
Exactly. It's always protected. So it makes it super easy for them to just kind of deal with that situation. Now, obviously on the flip side is like, if you only protect some of your builds, you could run into things that only show up in those protected builds. But when everything is consistent, then that only game changes are the things that are breaking, right? And we also have developer tools, right, that we've built in-house to help game developers like analyze crashes. And again, like, we try to make this as easy as possible for developers. So their normal reporting structure Like when a game crashes, right? A lot of these companies, they send that information back up to their back end, right? Like a Bug Splat or a Sentry. These are applications that these companies typically use to, send back that information, or they implement CrashPad. And they have these mini dump files. Like all of that works seamlessly with our current infrastructure. I'm shilling a little too hard, but
no,
sorry.
I understand, because that is like a typical question where it's like I've seen people always when Ricochet was announced, right? And all of a sudden you get the other side of the coin where it's kernel level. Oh no, it's going to destroy performance. Oh, it's going to do this and that. Oh no, now they have access to our information. Blah blah blah. So it's just like all these questions kind of come out when you propose a solution to any problem, but especially cheating. These really weird questions where it's like, yeah, it sounds like I'm shilling, but that's kind of what we do.
I mean, for us, like, we're trying to have low performance overhead. We understand that like gamers want performance, and so our whole motto behind Hyperion is like we want to try to deliver sub 1% performance overhead to the actual game, right? Unlike a kernel mode anti-cheat that runs maybe all the time when your system's booted, or in the kernel, right? This is a completely user mode solution. We only run when the game's running. We're not messing with like any system state. We're pretty low on the whole invasiveness threshold. So I think it will quell a lot of those concerns if people understand how the product works and what it does.
So I guess what does Vanguard do that makes it so successful? Is it that 3-prong approach I mentioned earlier? Is it, it can't just all be linked back to, it starts when you boot your PC, right? There has to be more to that. So I guess like what makes Vanguard so effective?
Clint, this is all you, but my thing to really kind of add to this before we start is it's really just the people and the motivation.
Yeah.
Like the team there is extremely motivated and they want to be the best. This isn't just a job for them, and they literally pour their lives into this problem space. So Mohammed's a great example, GamerDoc. You can hit him up on Twitter or at any point during any day, and he's on 24/7, 365, ready to hop in. So it's the drive, really, and the passion. So, Clint. Go.
Yeah, I mean, that's like, we definitely had great technology, right? And I think, when it comes to the kind of discussion about kernel, I kind of see this way as like the war is always going to change with cheating, right? Like it's an arms race. It's always been that way. It'll always be that way. I think we have a great solution, but it probably won't be the best solution forever, right? Like there's just a shelf life to all efforts, right? And so just to kind of highlight Nem's point, you really need a team that is ready to shift when, things change, whether that's, that you could have a great solution for a problem that, that works really well in the kernel that doesn't work. And maybe you need a behavioral or machine learning system for some other type of behavior, right? So I think some of it is about the effort of the company to be able to be serious enough to make the investment into the problem space as a whole, and to have a long-term horizon that like, okay, this isn't just a project that we're investing into for a short period of time, and then we're going to take those resources and have them build, some other system, right? It's like, no, we're going to find the people that are dedicated for this fight and, fund it to be able to continue that fight for as long as it needs to be. And having lived through it, like there are definitely times of success and failure and, a lot of learning lessons along the way, but every single one of those that you kind of learn through as a team and that you get stronger makes you stronger in the long haul, because those are cheaters that now have to learn those lessons,
So actually, that's actually something I wanted to bring up, because you did mention there's highs, there's lows. When the beta for Valorant dropped, right? It was that whole, early access through Twitch. I remember, I don't remember what Riot employee tweeted out. 24 hours in, there's already a cheater, but we got it covered. Was it all hands on deck when the beta dropped? How exactly was what was y'all's attention level at, I guess, when it was all happening?
I don't want to give too much inside baseball here, but I will say a little bit more in the abstract, because Valorant's still pretty recent. But most anti-cheat teams don't like to talk about cheating, right? And the reason for that is, as an anti-cheat team, the more visibility that a company brings to a problem, you actually could generate more cheaters from that, right? And companies have seen that too. So
Call of Duty,
yeah, exactly. So you have to manage that perception, because like if if players don't think that you can detect the cheating behavior and they're super competitive and they're like, well, I'll just start cheating if the company says they can't detect or they're working on this problem, I guess I'll just cheat in the meantime because I love this game, right? So with Valorant, the difference was we knew we were going into a very a market of player with FPS players, especially tactical shooters, that know cheating is just a thing, right? It's part of the standard language. So, I'm not necessarily as the guy who's in charge of anti-cheat happy with the way all the messaging was done, like over promising maybe in some cases. But I think it was still the right thing to do to talk to players about that, right? So to specifically give you a little bit of information of when we were in beta, right? Like beta was a good place for us to learn about our systems and learn about our process. We were okay with a certain level of cheating because you got to understand who your threats are and what they're doing. So sometimes you have to make some sacrifices for bigger wins down the road, right?
There's a lot to say on the beta situation, but I think Clint put it well. The thing is, beta, I think even for Riot, was completely unexpected at how successful Valorant beta was. There were a lot more people than we had anticipated. They were super excited about the game. I think the Twitch drops increased by an order of magnitude. Like we expected a certain number of beta players, and we got a lot more than that. So we tried. I'm sure, like you've seen early on, Vanguard has changed a lot since its inception, and that's part of the whole. You have to update your product to address the threats, and you have to be also. You can't take certain risks on players' machines. Like we tried some stuff that didn't work out, and we iterated on that to have a better product, right? And that's something that you constantly have to do in the anti-cheat game. You always have to evolve.
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring up, like, in beta, the concerns around cheating, like people finding cheats. There was at that time there was a much larger concern that we were taking too much control over people's computers by launching this kernel driver, and
beta was rough.
So
just
uninstall it from your systems, guys.
Well, it was a global pandemic. We were all working from home. It was there was a lot of challenges.
There were a lot of sleepless nights. Yeah, it was hell. I mean, honestly, I think
Nemi worked for like 3 months straight without a day off.
Yeah,
during that time,
it was rough. But I think that it shows, like, you got to persevere through it. There's not a magic way of doing something that like guarantees zero cheating. You have to constantly iterate and adapt.
Yeah, cheaters don't take days off, sadly. They don't have like PTO. These guys will work to push out an update for their cheat all the goddamn time. So I definitely feel bad for you there. But yeah, I cannot imagine to be a fly on that wall.
That's one of the things that has been so before I worked at Riot, I worked in a credit card processing space, right? And the most sophisticated types of attacks I saw were like high financial crime or more expensive, where they're trying to get away with, $50,000, $100,000 plus of money, or gamers. They'd be going after like $10, but there's just so much more passion and love behind what they're doing. So there's cheaters out there that they would never be able to justify the ROI, of the amount of energy they put into it, but it is kind of for the love of what they're doing. And so in a way, you got to respect that.
Yeah, that's pretty valid. Yeah, because there'll be times where I kind of do the same thing that GamerDoc would do, where he would just go into cheating discords and groups and just kind of lurk. And yeah, there's a surprisingly scary amount of passion when it comes to cheating. There are times where there are, users of cheats that are more angry at the actual cheat developer for not delivering on a promise than the, actual game devs. It's kind of a weird realm, to be honest. Yeah. Sorry, continue.
Oh, I was just going to add one last thing, which was just and a lot of the team that we had hired actually came from those communities, right? So, we've worked with lots of people over the years who were part of the cheating community. And so it's I think that there's this kind of narrative that gets created externally that it's like, oh, you have all the cheaters over here and all the anti-cheat people over here. But really, there's a lot of crossing back and forth between those lines at times.
That's actually what I was going to ask. How common is it for, I imagine at Riot, because Riot seems to be a little bit more, I guess, future facing. But I imagine, especially at Riot, that you guys would at times, either bring someone over from the dark side, or do almost like we'll look the other way on this one exploit because you guys are helping us fix another, exploit. Was there ever stuff like that happening? How
Well,
common is that even?
You can't get into the battle, or you should never get into the space where you would like kind of violate the principles. So we'd never let anybody get away with anything, in a way. Now, there's drama that participates in communities. Maybe you call it some high school drama or things like that. So when you're trying to get some information, you might leverage something like that. I would say generally the path is that people put a lot of energy in and learn to become good at breaking games or good at building cheats. And then, kind of want to legitimize their career, right? Like sometimes the game becomes breaking the anti-cheat. That becomes the game to them, right? Or to an individual. So, I think it's really important for companies to have bug bounty programs that include cheating, right? Like, if you could stop a huge cheat sweep from getting access to something that's going to subvert your technology, your security technology, and there's no avenue for this person who found the exploit to be able to benefit from that, well, then, there's a lot of people in places in the world where they don't have other options, right? So they have these brilliant skill sets, and like cheating is just one of the only ways for them to make money, or some illicit form, right? If companies, if a company gives an avenue, a lot more people would take it.
Yeah, that's actually pretty fair. And that was actually one of the things that really impressed me when I saw the announcement of the Riot bug bounty program, especially for cheating exploits. It's something that I think the PR win, the marketing win, when it does pay off, is worth whatever you shell out to whoever finds it. And I'm actually pretty surprised that a lot of other companies, especially the ones that have more public cheating problems, Call of Duty, Siege, Apex Legends, for instance, I'm surprised they don't implement some sort of bug bounty program. I've seen pages that are dead regarding it, but it's not very common in the industry, sadly.
Well, I think, to give them a little defense, you have to have the resources to, because you're going to get a lot of bogus claims, or people just like, oh, I went online and I downloaded a cheat. Here you go. Right. Like, oh yeah, anyone could have done that. Right. So I think it's an important aspect. And I think you have to have people that are in the communities that are attacking you to understand where real value comes from sometimes.
Personally, I try to do my best to help casual gamers understand development, how difficult fighting cheaters is. Analogy I usually give is, and cat and mouse, but also the other analogy that I've started using is it's kind of like you have a hole in the boat, and the quality of the towel, the whatever you use to plug the boat can change from update to update, patch to patch, from game to game. What is something that you guys wish casual players, or just your average player of Valorant or CSGO or Call of Duty, what is something that you wish they would understand about anti-cheat? Because there is a lot of, I guess, misinformation that gets parroted around these communities when it comes to stopping cheaters.
Yeah, I can jump in. So it's not, first thing I think is, there's no simple solution, right? There's no easy button that you can push and you solve cheating forever. A lot of these game developers and publishers really care about the problem space. They care as much as the players, and a lot of the times even more, right? Like they have an incentive for them to take care of this problem in as best of a way as possible. But sometimes there's resourcing constraints and other priorities on the inside that kind of get in the way of things. So I will say, as a positive thing that's happening in the industry, we have noticed a lot of companies doubling down on anti-cheat recently. A lot of companies see it as a problem that they want to address, and they've been investing time and resources into it. A lot of companies have been doubling, tripling, quadrupling their efforts on this front. They're hiring a lot more people. They're trying to solve this problem, because one of the key things that we've seen in the gaming industry is that it's less and less common for a game to just be released and then a year later a new version of that game is released. More and more games are now services, right? They live for multiple
Live
years.
Services.
Exactly. So in order to have a game that lasts against time, right? In order to have a competitive game that stands up through the multi years or the decades that it takes for a live service to kind of iterate on, you have to have a good answer to the cheating problem, right? And so a lot of companies have also came to that realization, and I think things will get better for gamers. I know that it may be easy to look at the problems that exist, but I think a lot of these game companies are definitely very interested in solving for these problems, and they've leveled up their efforts substantially to deal with that.
And then I guess like what is something I guess like takes you've seen about anti-cheat that have just been parroted around forums? Because I imagine you guys will like typically open up a thread here or there on Reddit talking about cheaters or anti-cheat and just be like, I can't believe I wasted 15 minutes reading through this. I imagine that happens.
Oh yeah.
So many. There's so many like misconceptions, or a lot of people think that it's all magic, and then other people think that even like anti-cheat, right? Like it's never one thing. Like almost none of these companies have just one solution that they're resting on. So the fact that it all gets pointed to the piece of technology that's being used, is sometimes like it's a little disingenuous to the effort.
Yeah, I think the other thing is, a lot of people have misconceptions on, software that's running on their computer. One of the biggest things is like the kernel, right? The kernel is such a scary thing for a lot of players because they're worried at the permissions that you get from there. But the reality of it is a lot of the same, information that people can get in the kernel, you can get from user mode, right? You don't even need to have a driver running. Just think about this. Probably nearly 90+% of malware that exists is completely user mode. It's like a program that someone clicks on the internet and it runs in the background on your system, right? It's not even using a kernel driver, right? So, if all of this malware can do its job and steal your banking information and mine cryptocurrency and all that stuff in user mode, then the kernel is not necessarily this like thing that gives you more privilege. The kernel, the reason why a lot of game companies have been kind of focusing their efforts on there is the cheats have gone there, and it gets complicated to detect these cheats if you're not in that privilege level, right? So compared to, a funny thing is compared to Byfron, we're not really like interested necessarily in detecting the cheats. We're interested in preventing the cheating. So we don't necessarily suffer from that same issue. But as a detection software, if you're trying to detect a cheat, it's running at a lower privilege level than you, and you can't trust some of the information that you're getting from the operating system because the cheat is like messing around with the system state. It's very, very difficult. So that's why a lot of these anti-cheat vendors have kind of, or even game companies have started to do kernel mode code. And that's just the biggest misconception that I think exists in the industry. It's like people are worried about that, like they'll like lose more of their private data or information. That's not going to happen. Like if you don't trust a company with your data, you shouldn't use their software, period. It doesn't matter if it's a kernel mode anti-cheat or whatever. If you don't trust a company, then you shouldn't trust the company, right? It's as simple as that.
The amount of data
right?
harvesting Facebook does on you, and they definitely don't have access to kernel level.
It's a web browser, right?
Yeah.
So
the priorities get a little mixed up there, it seems like, from most people.
Yeah. The kernel gives you a level of integrity and helps you solve the detection piece that unfortunately a lot of game companies have had to go to because the operating system does not have good solutions for it yet. But I think Microsoft is working on that problem to give more trust back to user mode.
That's what I was about to ask. Windows 11, started implementing certain features. I haven't fully looked into all of them because they're not required yet by a lot of games. But could you just give like a quick rundown as to what those potential solutions are that you just mentioned?
Well, I think the big one that has been in the press is the TPM, right? Having a level of trusted computing available on the machine, and I think trusted computing is going to help kind of solve the privilege issue, right? Because necessarily it doesn't mean that you need a kernel driver then to like make sure that the system's in a clean state and make sure that nothing is running in the kernel that's funky, right? The TPM can give you that level of attestation, right? Effectively, it can tell you that everything is in a safe state completely from user mode, and that's going to be a massive, I think, tool for developers to leverage. And I think it'll also help, quell some of the privacy concerns that people are worried about with kernel drivers.
Yeah, but obviously that still has ways to go.
Yeah, we're
Windows
talking
11,
years,
it's not,
years.
Yeah, years. It's not anywhere near, sadly, being required for everybody. And then also, I guess speaking and looking to the future, there has been a lot of this emphasis, or at least more marketing when it comes to anti-cheats, where it's like, oh, we're using machine learning. It's a lot of buzzwords regarding like data science. And then that leads to a lot of people on Twitter, on Reddit saying, oh, if someone has crazy stats, just, it's an easy ban. 80% headshots, ban. That's not something that I view as particularly sustainable long term. I guess what are y'all's opinions on the use of, I guess, data science, lack of a better term, but data science in clamping down on cheaters?
Yeah, we love it, honestly. We think it's an important aspect of the war against cheating. But as we mentioned earlier, there's not one solution. You need a lot of different things in combination to address cheating effectively, especially at the highest level of game, right? If you're a AAA game that has tens of millions, hundreds of millions of players, you need everything, right? You need everything combined to address these problems. And we think ML and data science is very important aspect, but it's not going to be the silver bullet. There's no silver bullet, unfortunately.
I mean, there are already, I would say probably most companies, the large games, are already running some type of ML model for player detection. The challenge with them is, the cheaters adapt. They put humanizers on their cheats to make them look more human. Then you have false positives, potentially. So it's really hard to just let that system run on its own. I mean, as somebody who's banned, tens of thousands in entire regions accidentally before, it's not a good experience when you're, banning good players, so, but like, player behavior and behavioral detections are definitely an important layer.
When Halo Infinite's multiplayer launched, I looked into what protections they have, and it seemed for the most part, it was like standard user mode, of cheat engines open, it just auto closes the game. There was no real protection, but then they did talk about how, their anti-cheat solution is strictly server side, strictly using data science, machine learning tools. And so far, that may change because the game is still in beta, a little bit of copium there, but like so far, if you play anywhere that's, diamond plat, if you play diamond or above ranks, in Halo Infinite, in Halo Infinite's ranked mode, you will come across multiple cheaters in your play session that day. The technology isn't at that point yet. Like, it'll get there sometime down the road, but right now, having a strictly server-side anti-cheat solution you need more than that, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it just, again, this just goes back to like your attack surface, right? And your threat, right? What kind of threats you're dealing with. And, I think Halo has been very successful in, revitalizing a lot of the players who used to play, and a lot of people have moved over to it. It's a really great game. So, I think they're probably experiencing maybe more cheating than they thought they were going to.
Fair enough. Yeah, that's kind of how I look at it. It's just a little bit of copium there, where maybe they change their perspective on it, on anti-cheat, but hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully they implement a little bit more protection.
I think back to Nemi's point earlier, where he said that these companies are making big investments in this space. Everyone's trying to. I imagine that the Halo team will continue to improve that service.
And then you guys mentioned, like you actually just mentioned, false bans, false positives, stuff like that. I guess when it comes to those actual internal numbers, obviously you don't want to divulge too much information, but how common is cheating? Because I always see, it'll be like, oh, there was a ban wave today in X game, and then there's always people saying, oh, new accounts just got made, or oh, that's there's at least in my personal evidence, it's 60% of my games have cheaters, and it's like that's not really what is going on.
That's a good point. And so, like, I think that's the cheater motivation bucket system that we have. Some people just cheat. I think, for content, right? So we've seen in League of Legends, people just cheat to, secure a skin, right, at the end of the rank system. But they actually care about their accounts. And if you give them even a temporary suspension or take away the reward that they received, they'll quickly reform and not cheat again, right? So that's kind of more like the opportunistic cheater. Then you have people whose entire mental model is just cheating. Like, they are completely unreformable. Like, all they do is they play the game to cheat, and they will not play the game if their cheats are not working. If their cheat's broken, they're not loading the game, because they don't really play the game and have fun with it without the cheat. Like, there's a level of domination there that they have, and addressing some of those people that are quote unquote unreformable is difficult, because there's no real solution there, except you constantly want to keep them out of the game by banning them, leveraging, some more stronger hardware IDs to keep them out of the game for longer. And then we also obviously have the cheat developers that are incentivized by cheating. That's the other bucket. And, I think for that, the goal is to really just drive up costs for them, so it's not profitable for them to continue to create cheats for this game.
Increase that barrier to entry, pretty much.
Correct. Yeah.
So one of the things I was going to add to the banning discussion is ban number. Like, this is also why publishing anything becomes difficult, right? Because if you say, "Oh, we banned 100,000 players," and people who see a lot of cheating are like, "Yeah, finally they got rid of all the cheaters." But to players who don't see cheating, they're like, "Oh, there's that many cheaters in the game," right? Like, it doesn't matter what number you use; it almost can be used against you. And generally, I think most game companies and most teams, the last thing they want to do is hurt a good player, because if you tell someone that they're cheating and they're not, maybe it's a little bit of an ego boost for a moment, but if they get locked out of the game, there's a good chance they go play something else. So you have to be very, very accurate, and with your decisions.
Yeah, and that's a little bit of a problem that we're seeing right now in the Call of Duty, especially the Warzone community, is that there is a shadow banning system in place. Now, they haven't come out and said and talked about how exactly it works, but from what people can surmise, from what cheaters have noticed, is that it seems to be a little bit more report-based than stat-based. Now, I assume they're always tweaking their model for shadow banning, but as of late, ever since the latest anti-cheat integration, it seems more and more that content creators are just getting hit with shadow bans. Now, whether or not they're cheating, no one knows for sure, unless, something pops up on a stream. But, it's, again, one of those things, like you just said, you have to be very accurate, because those creators, when they get shadow banned, they hop off, they go play something else. And now they have 30,000 people watching Apex instead of Warzone. So it is one of those things where it's not just the anti-cheat team for their own personal benefit want to make sure that they're accurate, but the entire company, everybody working on the game wants to make sure that this is actually a good anti-cheat solution.
Yeah, that's a great point too with false positives. If you falsely ban someone, that's significantly worse than getting an accuracy. It's probably better to not ban that innocent player more often than banning 100 cheaters, right? It's orders of magnitudes worse to falsely ban someone, and that is why there's such a high requirement for accuracy on anti-cheat.
Yeah, that's kind of what I tell people. It's again, you have to be. There's a high threshold for a reason, because as soon as you ban someone that doesn't deserve to be banned, it's your entire credibility goes out the window.
They may never come back.
Especially, yeah. And it doesn't even have to be a big name. It could be an average player. If enough average players get banned, that's a huge mark on your record.
So many people who get banned, right, don't think they're going to get caught. And they, you see tons and tons of, responses from players who are legitimately cheating.
Yeah.
But it's super important, right? Again, to Nem's point, you don't want to be banning any good players. That's, when the anti-cheat starts cutting into your good player base and not catching, the cheaters, that's when you got real problems.
Nemi's worked at Riot and Blizzard. You have worked at Riot primarily. Now you both are working on Byfron. When it comes to, I guess, when you guys go to publishers or even at your companies that you've worked at previously at these studios, it's not necessarily that you mentioned there's a lot more passion involved for some teams, but from the top down, from leadership, there's always going to be your normal corporate politics things, people coming in from marketing. There's always going to be interference from other teams. But I guess, what do some of the better publishers that you guys noticed do when it comes to enabling their anti-cheat teams to actually be effective, right? Whether it's like your budget, whether it's, oh no, we can't do, maybe we can't do kernel level because, you know, we want to avoid a PR nightmare, or probably hasn't focus tested well. Because it's not always a lack of talent, right? Or it's not always
of course,
passion, right? I think everybody that works on these games wants, for the most part, there to be no cheaters. But I guess what other times, you know, how much of it is publisher interference is the actual question.
I mean, I think the best thing to do from a publisher's perspective is you hire the best people that you can, and you let them deal with the problem space, and you hire these experts, and you try to not get in their way, and you try to enable them to solve the problem with, you know, the best way that they can, right? So one of the things that me and Clint had at Riot, we were very fortunate that Riot kind of let anti-cheat run as its own team, and we were able to address our own problem space however we saw fit, whether that was like acquiring technologies or making our own, right, in-house solutions, and choosing what those solutions look like, right? Now, obviously, you know, we had to play nice with everyone else, but we were pretty empowered to kind of go after the problem space ourselves and deal with cheating, right? So that was something that I think is changing in the game industry. I think more and more teams are getting that autonomy now, and I think that more and more publishers are kind of letting the subject matter experts at these respective companies deal with cheating. Whereas before, it may not have been the case. Like some companies didn't have dedicated anti-cheat teams. You know, there was budgetary restrictions, there was marketing, you know, issues there, et cetera, et cetera. I think things are changing now for the better.
You know, there are other challenges than just having the best anti-cheat people, right? Like, you know, if that boat has 10 holes in it or is made out of screen material instead, you know, it's going to be a lot harder to protect, right? So, you know, the old cliche, or the cliche that always gets talked about, is like, security is everybody's problem, right? If somebody lets somebody in the building, well, then, you know, everything that we did to protect this environment doesn't really do much to help, right? So, you know, it is one of those challenges where, you know, sometimes business decisions will be made on, you know, monetization or engine or any of these things that could have really big ramifications on the game's competitiveness down the road, right? So I think probably the biggest trend that we see is like anti-cheat is something that's thought of in the, you know, design process more now.
Okay. Yeah, that's actually huge, right? Because if you set out with this idea of making, you know, like one of our core tenets of our game is going to be cheaters are not welcome, right? And it's more than just saying cheaters are not welcome, but actually, you know, making that like an actual reality, then yeah, it's not just like a marketing win, but like your overall player base tends to be a little bit more happy. And I imagine, you know, Valorant players tend to have good experiences. I used to play a lot of Valorant, not anymore. But like I prefer CS:GO. I'm sorry, but like for the most part, it seems as if a lot of people are like, yeah, dude, I'm done with Counter-Strike. I'm going to go play Valorant just because I don't have to, there's better matchmaking experience, but also I don't have to deal with cheaters. And that's a very valid reasoning right there. So, you know, it's actually gives me a little bit more hope that a lot of games are taking into account, you know, like anti-cheat as a core pillar of their design process. So yeah, thank you for that, I guess, hope right there.
Yeah, we were very fortunate that the Valorant team, that was definitely one of their core pillars. They announced it early on that anti-cheat was going to be a priority for that game. So we had a lot of support internally at Riot that, you know, some other game companies may not give to their anti-cheat folks. But as you said, things are changing, right? Like for the better.
Nemi, particularly when you were at Blizzard, right?
Yeah.
What was I guess, the biggest difference between working at Blizzard versus working at Riot, specifically on anti-cheat? I think, was Blizzard's anti-cheat called Warden, if I remember correctly?
Yeah. So that's the internal name of the anti-cheat there. I gotta say the thing is, when I was there at the time, Blizzard's first game that really needed like a substantial anti-cheat was going to be Overwatch, right? So I mean, you know, Blizzard before then they had a real-time strategy games, and there was definitely design decisions there that could have been probably improved upon, like Fog of War, right? and they also had World of Warcraft, which was the behemoth, right? And an MMO has a completely different cheating problem space than an FPS, right? Like you don't
Modding,
have
scripting, that
aim
kind of stuff.
bots, right?
Yeah.
So one of the things that was interesting is that at Blizzard, when I got there, I did help build up a lot of the team there, the game security engineering team that it eventually exists today. That was a central effort for the game company. Now, it was interesting to be there at at that time, and Blizzard's got a lot of bright engineers still that have taken on a lot of the work that I've left since then. But I would say that the probably the biggest difference between the two publishers, between Riot and Activision Blizzard at the time was, and I think things have changed now. Don't get me wrong, but at the time was maybe the level of control that in the other teams had over the anti-cheat as a direction. Like I know at Blizzard, it was difficult for us to have like a kernel mode solution. Like that was not going to be a thing at the time for Overwatch because that was just not a problem space that the company wanted to go into. Now, I would say that things have changed since then. Like clearly, Activision Blizzard has released Ricochet, and they're working on their own kernel mode anti-cheat.
Yeah.
And maybe that's happened because now that more and more games are shipping with kernel mode anti-cheats, and at the time it wasn't right because if we look at Overwatch years back, that wasn't necessarily as common as it is today. So yeah. I would say that was kind of like a little bit more control on the Riot end, on our own destinies.
Okay. That's interesting. Yeah, because this is a lot of stuff like we don't really get a peek behind the curtain for anti-cheat. So a lot of stuff is very like, we don't know what's going on. Our guess is as good as some other dudes on Twitter.
Players, y'all, everyone, even us, right, as players too, we got to make our concerns known to these game publishers, and the best way we can do that is by trying to engage in whatever way. And you can't say that like Activision Blizzard isn't trying. They clearly are, right? They're definitely working on this problem space, and they care as much as you all.
A lot of the, I guess, anger that I saw early on, 3 months after launch of Warzone, 3-4 months after Warzone launched, was like, there's no anti-cheat. There's cheaters running wild. Why can't they just hit up easy anti-cheat and implement that? It'd be so easy. And then you sit there and you explain the more realistic part where they like doing things in a house. Making an effort like this would take a year to a year and a half, and then finally we did get something a year and a half later. It's one of those things where it's like players will be your harshest critics, and they won't give you a lot of kudos when you do something right. I guess, how much does player feedback change what anti-cheat teams do?
At Riot, it was very important. Different game companies interact with players differently, but Riot was Riot's very open with their community, and they try to engage constantly back and forth because it is very player focused. So I would say for us, at least at Riot, when we were working there, it was very important. And I think it is important for every game company. I just think for Riot, it was even more important than some, right? Like we were very sensitive to feedback, for better or for worse. Like sometimes, that can lead to over exaggeration sometimes, but it's definitely
it comes with the
case.
territory. Fair enough.
Yeah. Well, and you have players that all have different needs too, right? If you're a highly competitive player, well, cheating is going to be really high up on your list. But if your problem is some features or some, lobbies or whatever, those players might want that. So there is always a competition of like, well, this group of players really wants this, and this other group of players really wants this. What's the cost of doing those things? How do we make, as many players happy as we can?
Fair. Yeah. And I mean, a lot of that is like you want to have goodwill with your players, right? For instance, Call of Duty, like I mentioned, had the issues for a while, had their cheating issues for a while, and it did lose a good amount of community goodwill because there would be, always every week at least a couple stories about either someone getting caught on a stream cheating or some, person accused of cheating, or, you would see articles about cheat goes viral for flying motorcycle, just weird stuff like that. And it kind of becomes the identity of the game. and what a lot of players perceive the game as, right? So like, yeah, now we have some solution that's going to be hopefully getting better over time, but that community goodwill is going to take a good amount of time to get back, right? Because even now, I was playing yesterday for a couple hours and I had a really, really good game, and at the end of it, this guy just kept calling me a cheater. I'm like, I'm not, man, I'm not, but okay.
Yeah, sometimes perception can be worse than reality, right? Like if people perceive that the cheating problem is much worse than it actually is, it can like degenerate the game substantially, the community of the game substantially. But I think to be said is that publishers probably should try to engage more on these topics with players to help alleviate some of those concerns. And what we've seen nowadays in the industry, that more and more publishers are doing such a thing. Again, to point to Call of Duty, like they are engaging, they are explaining what's coming up. They're working on the problem space, and that helps a lot, I think.
Well, one of the things I love that Riot does is like their engineering blog posts, for example. I even any blog posts about cheating, you guys, well, I'm saying you guys, but the Riot team does tend to go into a decent amount of depth as to, you know, what's going on. So like even stuff like that, like you don't have to do a whole big red carpet rollout for anti-cheat, but like, you know, blog posts about what the numbers are looking like, you know, what updates are coming down the pipeline, stuff like that would go a long way.
I think the thing is, at Byfron, we're really trying to improve the quality of gamers everywhere in the gaming industry. The only reason me and Clint left Riot was because we wanted to have more of an impact in the gaming industry. We love our team. We love the problem space. So it was very difficult of a thing for both of us to do. But what we wanted to really do is to have a positive impact for gamers everywhere. I mean, me and Clint are both hardcore gamers. Our entire lives has been revolved around playing games. My professional career was kind of established on games, right, with World of Warcraft and my tomfoolery there. So with that said, like Byfron is kind of our passion, our love letter to gamers. Like we're trying to improve the quality of game security throughout the entire industry, and we do think that we have a great product that serves a need that's not been currently filled in the market. We think that a preventative solution is an important piece, as we've seen in our professional careers. I saw the effectiveness of something on like that on Overwatch at Blizzard. The game, like I said, had a pretty strong launch, stayed pretty safe for a year in, and then at Riot, when we put similar systems inside of League of Legends, we saw how much cheating dropped, as well as we had that system too in Valorant, and we think that because of that strong preventative solution, it helped the Valorant cheating landscape today, right? Like Valorant cheats are pretty low, and we think that the preventative solution there played an instrumental role, right, in that. And so with Byfron, we think that we can produce this product for the greater gaming industry that is superior to the stuff that we've produced before, has come a long way with all the learnings that we've done, and kind of addressing the needs that game developers want. And so we think we have a really competitive offering that will tremendously help when studios are dealing with cheating issues.
Yeah.
And the one thing I would add to that as well is, like, if you see the trend that things are going in with the whole, like, play to pay or play and get paid model,
the
right?
Play to earn model.
Or thank you, yes, play to earn model. Yeah, I mean that's something that I've always wanted to see game companies do more of, and there just wasn't vehicles for that to be done. But I had a long run in with boosters, and there's a lot of really great players that they put so much time and energy into the game that they financially want to get something out of that, and so they go into boosting other people's accounts, which is a whole other type of cheating and problem, right? But I think if we can get better as an industry, or the games industry can get better at creating more secure experiences, we can actually create new experiences for players too, right? And new types of economies, new types of games can exist. And so I think it's an exciting time. And so, like, yeah, that's kind of what we want to be a part of. I feel like a lot of times from an engineering mindset, people say, well, if it's not 100% protected, there's no value there. But that's that's absolutely not the case,
Yeah.
right? Like there's a ton of value to be had on both sides, with imperfect solutions. And if you're building if you're building a solution to a perfect one, I think that's a good place to be. So
that's a good way of putting it, actually. Yeah. Because obviously you guys are building this out to be something that, and by this, I mean Hyperion, Byfron, you guys are building this out to where it's not just a solution for now, but a solution for future, right? So I guess where do you guys see the industry going when it comes to, obviously cheating is going to grow as an industry. Obviously gaming is going to grow as an industry.
Sure. Well, I look at it kind of like this, which is first off, the future's unknown, right? Like no one can say exactly what's going to happen tomorrow. But if you look at the trend of things, software is still eating the world. More and more things are becoming software. More and more experiences. I mean, the whole idea around the metaverse, you go to some of these metaverses and they're just games, really, in the way you think about them, right? It's just different ways to receive or to experience content, and multimedia stuff. And as these experiences move more and more online, there needs to be higher standards held on them, right? Like, when some of these these tournaments that are happening for games, in the millions of dollars, and someone can become God, like that's a really big problem, right? So competition, these, if you will, these virtual markets and virtual worlds will need greater protection. And so like, I think that's just a trend that is going to continue.
Okay. Well, actually, that's my next question I was going to ask. Would you guys, move into industries outside of gaming for, software protection, for instance? Because, I don't know exactly how, if you guys are also going to make a DRM solution to rival, I can't ever say de novo correctly, but yeah, is there's other anti-tamper, issues other than just cheating.
I would say our focus is gaming right now, and one of the things about having like a startup company or a small company is that you really have to have like a specific focus on a problem set that you're trying to solve. We can't do everything. Maybe in the future we might expand to other industries, but currently, like our goal is to really solve cheating. Like we're all gamers. Every single one of us at Byfron is a hardcore gamer that has built up their professional careers in the gaming industry, and we hate cheaters, and we really want to solve that problem, and that's the biggest thing on our mind. Maybe when we solve that issue, which is kind of wild, like to think about it, will we ever solve cheating? We can move on to other problem space, but we're very dedicated to this. Like this is our lives, man. We love this problem space, and we want to deal with it.
Yeah. I would say long term, it's something that we're open to. So like one of the things that we've learned in our experience, both Nemi and I, is that like talent is the thing that matters, right? So part of the way that we're trying to build Byfron is a company that's focused around, we want to acquire and have the best talent in this space. We think that's what actually makes the big difference. So, if we could get access to talent that would help us, in some of those other places, well then sure, yeah, I think that would be something that we'd look at in the future.
Yeah. It's a good point. Like the product differentiator, right, of a successful product is really the people and the talent that they bring to that product.
Well, particularly in an arms race, right? Like if you're in an arms race,
you need the best.
It's nice.
We need the better arms.
That is true. That is actually, right. How do you fight attackers? You just get really, really good defenders. That's kind of how that works, right? So yeah.
The thing that we learned is like anti-cheat makes a big difference to a game.
Yeah.
Like an actual dollar difference to how much money a game is able to make.
Yeah.
And we're pretty confident in our solution to generate value for a company.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is a approach that you don't really see many solutions talking about, where it's just like, we're focusing on detecting people. Preventative is not really something that I guess gets talked about a lot. Or it's not as well understood by like the general populace, so it doesn't get talked about.
Yeah, I think it's very powerful too, and that's why we kind of jumped into that. We see like there's a need for something that's not been addressed, and we've seen the effectiveness of it. Like just something basic. I'll give you an example. Is like cheats have to read game memory. A lot of the cheats do. Like the most effective cheats like read game memory to like figure out where players are, or to like adjust their aimbots, right, to shoot at the head, etc., for their ESPs to render, right. But if you can protect that memory from being accessed or touched, right, like that's a massive thing. Like cheats can't read it, right. So we're really like thinking about that problem space a lot, and trying to make it super difficult for cheats to introspect the game and gain some sort of understanding on how things work. Yeah.
This actually just hit me as you brought up reading from memory. Like it triggered like a paragraph in my head. But when it comes to, I guess, like your typical hardware cheats, so things like DMA, direct memory access, PCIe screamers, even something as simple as like, well, technically the Arduino aimbot is not the same level, but like in general, when it comes to hardware cheating, how, I know you guys are still like testing the product, but like, does a preventative product like this do anything against, something that's more a niche kind of cheating, where it's like, there's a lot of investment you got to do as a cheater into those pieces of hardware, but like, it is still a problem at higher levels?
Oh yeah, for sure. The preventative solution, I think, is better than the detection piece in that regard, because it's easier to can hide that memory, or to protect that memory that these cheats are trying to access and read, right? For in a preventative mindset, and even if they have a hardware hack, they can read that memory. If it's protected and it's encrypted, they can't really like figure out what's there, right? Without like figuring out the algorithm to decrypt it, which might change per build or might change per runtime of the game, right? So it gets super complex and convoluted. And I do think like Hyperion is a good solution for even something that's more advanced, like hardware cheats. Now, I'll also say like one thing that I wanted to kind of mention is like we've seen that a lot of security come down from the operating system manufacturers and like hardware manufacturers like Intel and AMD. They're trying to solve this problem space too, but not for anti-cheat purposes. They're trying to solve it for more of like a security perspective, right? To protect like certain information in memory for being read, like credentials. Like if your Windows credentials could be extracted, you could log into anything, right? Like so they're solving these problems from a more security perspective. But a lot of the solutions that they've developed is stuff that we can leverage, and it's really cool to see the entire industry grow, like the entire greater security industry grow into enforcing more trust on a client. I mean, with Clint on this is like the PC is becoming more and more of a console, right? Like it is actually, if you think about it, with Windows 11 and some of the hardware requirements that they have with the TPM chip, virtualization-based security, the PC is going to get into a state that I think, my theory is that like for certain software, you'll have to reboot into like a trusted environment to play that software or to use that software. Like you could even see that for like enterprise applications like Adobe products, right? Oh yeah, because of DRM requirements, you got to reboot. Or for Netflix, if you want to access 4K streaming, oh, you know what, your computer is in untrusted mode, reboot, and then you'll be able to see the high fidelity stream of your favorite content. Yeah, this is a. I know I went
that's
tangent.
A good point. I didn't think about it from the aspect of like just DRM or protecting like streaming content. That's actually a really good point. I actually did not like that. Didn't even occur to me because I'm just so focused on games. But yeah, and then absolutely last question, because this just also popped up. Lately we've seen the, I guess, not the scaring. Oh my god, my camera did the thing again. One sec. Okay, so lately we've seen the I don't want to say hysterical articles when it comes to computer vision and using that in for cheating. So for example, you would get like a capture card, you would route that capture card into a scripting device, into any other PC, and essentially it's being able to identify enemies, and then directly like a normal aimbot. And these are, again, very rudimentary because the technology just isn't there yet. So a lot of gameplay,
I mean, we've seen it with webcams too, where people will program a webcam and it looks at the screen, and so like there's really no cheat that's actually running on the hardware that's running the game, right?
Exactly. And now it's more so evolved into using a capture card, so it's still not running on the hardware, but only the capture card is taking whatever it's seeing on screen and sending that over because, two PC setups,
Yeah.
for instance. And now a lot of people, there's been some hysteria around it. And there was one developer that got a cease and desist from Activision because they were showing it off. And the gameplay, again, was very much like this won't be used to a decent effect at all in a normal game environment, right? Like an actual game environment, because it's very obvious that this guy has set it to hardcore mode where it's like one bullet to kill someone against bots, right? He's not playing against any actual players. So it's still very much a work in progress. And we have a couple years before I think personally that this is like a really, really, really big issue. But of course, it's always good to prepare for the future. Where do you, I guess, what kind of solutions do you guys see to stopping things that, well, the cheat isn't running on the system? So what do you do at that point?
Yeah, so this is great because I think a lot of the new technologies that are coming down from chip manufacturers address this problem. Actually, they don't address it in the sense that it's for anti-cheat purposes, like I mentioned before. They address it for DRM purposes. How do you take streaming content from something like Netflix or HBO, and you protect that from being captured on the machine? How do you encode it so that you can't have a capture card like pull off frames of that data and save it on disk, right? So that you can then upload it on the Pirate Bay, right? These are solutions that DRM providers and streaming providers need to solve for. And the interesting thing is, like, there are a lot of things in flight right now to solve for these problems. With trusted computing becoming more and more prevalent, there's going to be like dedicated channels for memory that get sent to the GPU that are going to be encrypted, that won't be ever touched on the CPU, like for processing, for example. And there'll be only certain cards that have that ability to access that content. So you're not going to be able to, hook up your own little like GPU thing that you're masquerading as a GPU device, right? You're not going to be able to just hook that up to get frame buffers. You'll actually have to be a signed thing from NVIDIA, and it'll be like a cryptographically way of generating like proof that you are a valid entity that has access to that content that you receive. So it gets complicated, but I think there are solutions coming down the wire, and I think that we as an industry will always adapt to solve for that problem in whatever way we can. Just because you're using like a webcam to pixel read, that means that the camera is probably going to be plugged into your system. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be external. Can we enumerate devices that are on your network, et cetera, et cetera? There'll always be something that gets more and more complex that anti-cheats will have to solve for.
Yeah, and I would say the stage that we're at now, which is like, you don't need to do all that to cheat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I would say even with some of the detections that are out there today with behavioral detection, you probably could detect, like, you're probably not going to be able to detect that behavior in one game, but by the time that person gets to the top of the ladder or, gets X number of games in, they'll be able to start to build a pattern around like, okay, this is suspicious behavior or those type of things. Right. And then, there's always a cost of like, oh, well, how much is it to actually get that setup running? And, how much skill does it take to do, really the community that's really develops their own cheats and, runs the small private groups where it's like 10 only, they could have a big impact
IDs
on like
to join all that.
Yeah. Exactly. They could have a real big impact on tournaments and grassroots, but the truth is they don't really have that big of an impact on the, I guess they can, but for the most part, it's the like average cheats that people can go and download that cause the most havoc right now.
We've seen that the most effective cheats are still memory-based cheats that are running on the computer, right? Like it's just, they're going to be more effective than something reading your screen, right? To, move your mice, as you mentioned, right? Like the crude implementation of that, like simplistic algorithm it works in a bot game, but will it work in a real life scenario, an actual Call of Duty match? It's not there yet, the technology, right? It needs some time. So I think with better client trust, as I mentioned, with more hardware, guarantees that we're getting from chip manufacturers, as well as, improved machine learning algorithms, data science on the back end, as Clint alluded to, we have things in the anti-cheat arsenal to address these problems.
Just to add too, like one of the problems that we dealt with a ton was bots, right? Mm-hmm. And like there's a conclusion that you come to in their evolution, which is like, well, what happens when you can't tell the difference between a bot and a human anymore, right? Through some type of behavioral.
Yeah, it's just
You
like
know,
more
so
for
then it's like
MMO grinding or like
sure content generation, that type of thing, right? But that's a future that's definitely coming, and you know, I think most of these companies are already aware of it and building. You know, a bot is going to be the best at catching bots in the future.
Yeah, that's again fair enough. It makes 100% of sense. It was just something that I was like, because it did seem I was getting a lot of shit for saying that it's a lot of the hysteria around that specific cheat, for example, is overblown. Like it's
of course, yeah.
The future, yes, dangerous, but right now it's not the biggest. It's not the top of the priority list. So yeah,
as you said, we got years before that starts becoming a problem. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and there's even cheat makers who know that their stuff is detected and just use resellers and change the name of it, you know, because people don't know that it's a detected cheat, and sell it to the same user group, you know, over and over again.
Yeah.
And those people just keep getting banned.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's kind of, I don't want to say I respect the hustle, but I mean, there is a good amount of like, wow, these guys are really good at scamming people. That's kind of crazy. Yeah, it's a little impressive, but also pretty scary. Like personally, I've seen the same menu just recolored differently and sold as like 15 different cheats, all for the same price, you know. And it's like, okay, if you do the math, the actual developer is making a shit ton of money. So it's mass manufactured factory line cheats is what I kind of describe them as. Yeah. But yeah. Whew, that was a lot, right? If you made it this far, round of applause. Honestly, you did an amazing job. I'll definitely be doing more inside baseball type videos like these. This only took so long to release because, well, life got in the way. The beginning of the year till now has been super crazy for me. This kind of fell off the priority list. So if you enjoyed this video, please do let me know. I'd really appreciate it. It helps me know what I'm doing right, what I'm doing wrong. So constructive criticism, always appreciated. Enough excuses though. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.